It works on an aesthetic level. The building is beautiful, and it serves to document the history of our state and the impact of time. However, by 1995, it became apparent that time was taking its toll on the structural integrity of the old State House. Repairs and renovations are familiar occurrences at the old State House. For over 160 years, as problems arose, they were handled, but almost always superficially. Not until after World War II were major repairs undertaken, which left the building as we recognize it today. But no one ever addressed the main underlying problem, the foundation. Now, for the first time in its long history, the structural integrity of the old State House was to be secured. Beginning in 1996, 4 phases of construction and renovation were planned, which kept the facility closed to the public for almost 3 years. The construction required at the State House was of such monumental importance that every precaution had to be taken to guarantee it would be done once and done correctly. Structural engineers were brought to the site, and numerous studies conducted. Trenching was carefully done around the base of the building to expose the foundation. For the first time, engineers could see what they were really up against as they determined how to strengthen the foundation.
The most important discovery was the fact that the building was built on a very shallow foundation. The foundation was only as wide as the wall is thick, so in places it was only 2 feet wide. And the depth did not exceed 3 feet, and in some places was 2 feet in depth. A typical foundation of today's standards would be at least 3 to 4 feet deep for a building of that size, and would have a spread footing of concrete that went out in excess of 1 foot to 2 feet on each side of the wall. So you can see that it was under-designed for the loads that were being exhibited on the building.
Any renovation is complicated, but one involving a building of such historic significance requires extra care. The historical integrity of the site had to be protected, along with its structural integrity. For months, archaeologists surveyed in an effort to rescue important artifacts and evidence of past construction.
We found a thin veneer of artifacts that speak to that issue. We found a lot of things like buttons, little decorative things that probably came off of ladies' dresses in the 19th century. These are all little items that bespeak of the human use of the property. One of the things that we know for sure was that the State House grounds itself was used as a campsite by Union soldiers during the occupation of Little Rock in 1863 through 1865. One of the things that we found there were some buttons that came off of a Union military coat. They're brass buttons with eagles on them, very specific to Union uniforms.
The third phase of reconstruction involved the actual foundation work. In other words, replacing the original inadequate underpinning. The first goal during this important stage was to selectively dismantle and salvage exterior steps, porches, and brickwork. Meticulous care was taken where the walls met the foundation. For structural reasons, the underpinning could only be replaced in 8-foot increments. During this phase of construction, many artifacts were unearthed. One of the most interesting was an 1883 brick cistern located on the west side of the main building. The cistern was built before the city had running water and served as an underground reservoir. Later, it was used as a dump. Found inside were remnants of the 1876 fountain. Exciting discoveries such as the cistern offer insight into our past. Once the foundation was in place, it was time to give the entire structure a facelift. This phase targeted the repairing and patching of cracks to exterior stucco, landscaping, and the addition of an elevator to the east wing. Repairs were made to the second-floor joist-bearing pockets along the exterior walls. The entire electrical system was rewired, fire and smoke detection systems installed, as well as 2 platform lifts added to the second floor. Interior plaster walls, ceilings, and wood trim were repaired and repainted. The strength and beauty of the old State House has been restored.
The old State House like a lot of buildings that got a restoration or redo early on, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, a lot of mistakes were made. And one of the mistakes that was made at the old State House is that a lot of the original finishes were removed. For example, they went through and they stripped all of the woodwork in the 1940s rehabilitation of the building. They also removed most of the original plaster. So that leaves you with very little fabric from which to get evidence. In order to find what we needed, we searched down in crevices and behind things, because those were places that were too difficult to, it took more time to remove the paint from. The graining that was done in the, originally in the 1840s Little House of Representative, and the whitewashing that was on the wall reveals a very, very simple interior. In the 1885 part, where the building was rehabilitated to take care of an expanding government, it was also probably a more prosperous government. So you see marbleizing on the same columns across the hall in the larger chamber.
It seems like ages since the doors of the old State House were open, but to her it's been mere moments. A reconstruction that pales in comparison to the years following the Civil War. Murder, maladies, and occasional mayhem have marked the years since the old Capitol was built, along with ceremony, celebration, valor, and victories. The foundation of the old State House is sound, the pillars of power restored, and her future secured for generations to come.